The Vishari research station hung in the void like a crystalline spider web, its translucent corridors reflecting the light of 3 distant stars. For 200 cycles, the galaxy's brightest minds had gathered here to study the artifact, a smooth, obsidian sphere roughly the size of a human head that defied every law of physics they understood. Briar stood at the observation window, his breath fogging the glass as he watched the latest test. His dark hair fell across his forehead as he leaned closer, eyes fixed on the sphere suspended in the testing chamber below. Around it, representatives from 17 species operated their instruments, their varied appendages moving with practiced precision. "Still nothing," muttered Dr. Zethkael, the Vishari lead researcher. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of profound frustration. The Cthreen tried their graviton pulse. The Yithrans attempted quantum entanglement markers. Even the Sorvith psionics couldn't establish a connection. Briar nodded, making notes on his datapad. As the human liaison to the project, he'd watched dozens of species attempt to interact with the artifact over the past month. Each brought their unique biology and technology to bear. Each failed completely. The sphere simply hung there, inert and indifferent, its surface occasionally rippling with patterns that seemed almost like mockery. "The human delegation arrives today," Zethkael said, his translator rendering his clicking speech into standard. "Though I doubt your species will fare any better." "No offense intended." "None taken," Briar replied, though he couldn't help the slight defensive edge in his voice. Humanity was still the newcomer to the galactic stage, their 200-year presence barely a footnote compared to civilizations that had spanned millennia. They were tolerated, sometimes respected, but rarely expected to contribute breakthroughs. The door to the observation deck hissed open, and Briar turned to see the new arrival. She was younger than he'd expected, mid-20s, perhaps, with auburn hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She wore the standard utility jumpsuit of the Human Exploratory Corps, but carried herself with a quiet confidence that made Briar straighten unconsciously. A data slate was tucked under one arm, and her green eyes swept the room with sharp intelligence. "Anali Ia Okonkwo," she introduced herself, extending a hand to Zethkael, who regarded the gesture with confusion before remembering human customs and awkwardly touching her palm with one of his manipulator appendages. "Sorry I'm late. The quantum slip took longer than scheduled." "Dr. Okonkwo," Zethkael acknowledged. "Your credentials are impressive for one so young. Xenoarchaeology, theoretical physics, and cognitive sciences. Though I must warn you that everyone else has tried and failed." Anali Ia smiled, and Briar noticed it didn't quite reach her eyes. "I read the reports. All 2,000 pages." She moved to the observation window, and Briar found himself studying her profile. There was something different about her, though he couldn't quite articulate what. Not arrogance. The galaxy had plenty of that. Something more like quiet determination mixed with genuine curiosity. "May I enter the testing chamber?" she asked as Zethkael's eyes blinked in surprise. "That's highly irregular. The artifact has shown no signs of danger, but protocol. I'm not asking to touch it," Anali said gently. "Just to be in the same room. Observer effect and all that." The Vishari researcher looked at Briar, who shrugged. "I'll accompany her," he offered. Minutes later, they stood in the sterile white chamber, the artifact hovering at eye level between them. The air hummed with the subtle vibration of containment fields, though Briar knew from the reports that the sphere needed no containment. It simply stayed wherever it was placed, perfectly still relative to the station's reference frame. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Anali Ia said softly, circling the sphere slowly. "Everyone's been trying to make it respond to them. But what if that's not how it works?" Briar watched as she moved, and then his breath caught. The artifact was moving. Not dramatically, just a subtle rotation, barely perceptible, but its orientation was definitely changing. Following Anali Ia as she walked around it. When she stopped, it stopped. When she moved left, it shifted its axis to track her. "Don't move," Briar whispered urgently into his calm. "Anali, don't move." Above them, in the observation deck, he could hear the sudden commotion as researchers noticed what was happening. Anali Ia froze, her eyes widening as she realized what Briar had seen. "It's following me," she breathed. "Keep moving." Zethkael's voice crackled over the speakers. "Slowly. We're recording everything." Anali Ia raised her right hand. The artifact rotated slightly, orienting toward it. She moved her hand left, then right, and the sphere followed with smooth precision, like a compass needle tracking magnetic north. Why? She whispered, more to herself than anyone else. Why me? I'm not special. I don't have any enhanced abilities, no genetic modifications, no psionic talents. I'm just human. But even as she said it, Briar saw the realization dawning in her eyes, the same realization that was crystallizing in his own mind and spreading through the observation deck like wildfire. Just human, he repeated slowly. Anally IA, every species that tested this artifact, what do they all have in common? She thought for a moment, her hand still extended, the artifact still tracking. They're all older than us, more advanced, more specialized. The Vishari have four-dimensional perception. The Cthreen can manipulate space-time. The Yithrans exist partially in quantum states. And humans? Analia's voice was barely a whisper now. We're generalists. Adaptable. We evolved to observe and track movement for hunting and survival. Our pattern recognition is wait. Her eyes widened further. Our proprioception. Our spatial awareness. We're wired to understand and predict movement in three-dimensional space better than almost any species because we evolved as persistence hunters. Briar felt a chill run down his spine. The artifact isn't responding to technology or exotic abilities. It's responding to something baseline, something primal. In the observation deck, Zethkael's voice carried a note of awe. All our advanced capabilities, our evolved senses, our technological integration, they might have made us too complex, too different from whatever created this. Anally IA lowered her hand slowly, and the artifact settled back to neutral orientation. She looked at Briar, then up at the observation window, her expression a mixture of wonder and humility. Sometimes, she said quietly, the answer isn't about being the most advanced. It's about being simple enough to ask the right question. She turned back to the artifact, and this time when she moved, she wasn't just being tracked, she was leading. And as the sphere began to pulse with soft light for the first time in 2 centuries, Briar understood that humanity had just proven something profound. They weren't special because they were superior. They were special because they'd remained, at their core, beautifully, adaptably human.